You're watching the sun go down. The sky bleeds red across the horizon, orange fading to pink, colors so vivid they don't seem real. You've seen this hundreds of times, everyone has, and everyone knows why it happens. The sun's light has to travel through more atmosphere at sunset, and all that extra air filters out the blue light, leaving the red. Simple. Atmospheric scattering. That's what you learned in school, that's what you tell yourself, and it sounds scientific enough that you never dig deeper. But let me ask you something that should make you deeply uncomfortable. If the atmosphere is filtering out blue light, where does it go? And more importantly, why is the entire sky above you still blue when the horizon is red? If the atmosphere scatters blue light, shouldn't the whole sky turn red at sunset? It doesn't. So what's actually happening? Here's what you think you know. Sunlight is white, made of all colors mixed together. When it hits the atmosphere, the air molecules scatter the shorter wavelengths, the blues and violets, more than the longer wavelengths, the reds and oranges. At noon, the sun is overhead, light travels straight down through the minimum amount of air, blue scatters everywhere, sky looks blue. At sunset, the sun is at the horizon, light travels sideways through much more air, blue gets scattered away completely, only red makes it through. That's the story. That's Rayleigh scattering. And it's not wrong exactly, it's just catastrophically incomplete, because it doesn't explain why you're seeing red at all. Let me tell you something about light. Light doesn't have color. Color is not a property of electromagnetic radiation. Light has wavelength. Wavelength is a physical property, a distance, something you can measure with a ruler if the ruler were small enough. But color is something your brain invents. When light of a particular wavelength hits the cone cells in your retina, those cells fire, and your brain interprets that pattern of firing as a sensation we call color. The sensation is not in the light, it's in you. So when you ask why the sky is red at sunset, you're not asking about the light, you're asking about your brain's interpretation of the light. And that interpretation is lying to you. Stay with me because this is where it gets strange. When sunlight enters the atmosphere, it encounters molecules of nitrogen and oxygen. These molecules are much smaller than the wavelength of visible light. When light hits something much smaller than its wavelength, it scatters. But not all wavelengths scatter equally. The scattering intensity is inversely proportional to the fourth power of the wavelength. Blue light has a wavelength of about 450 nanometers. Red light has a wavelength of about 650 nanometers. Blue scatters about 9 times more intensely than red. That's why the sky is blue during the day. The blue light is getting scattered in all directions, bouncing around the atmosphere, hitting your eye from every angle. You're seeing scattered blue light no matter where you look. But here's the critical part. At sunset, the light path is longer. The sunlight has to travel through maybe 30 times more atmosphere than it does at noon. As it travels, the blue light gets scattered away, yes, but scattered away where? Not destroyed, not absorbed, scattered, redirected. That blue light is still in the sky. It's bouncing around above you, illuminating the upper atmosphere, keeping the sky blue directly overhead even as the sun sets. Do you see what happens? The blue doesn't disappear, it just doesn't make it to the horizon. The light that does make it through the extra atmosphere to your eye has had most of its blue components scattered out, leaving predominantly longer wavelengths, red, orange, yellow. That's what you see at the horizon. If you want to understand how the universe actually works, not just how it looks, but how it works, hit that subscribe button. Let's find things out together. Now I want to take this deeper. Let's be honest about what you're actually looking at. When you see a red sunset, you're not seeing the sun's light turned red. You're seeing the sun's light with components removed. The red was always there. It was just mixed with blue and green and yellow, making white. The atmosphere didn't create the red. It subtracted everything else. What you're seeing is an absence. You're seeing what's left over after the world has filtered out most of the visible spectrum. And here's what bothers me. Your brain interprets that absence as a presence. It sees the lack of blue and calls it the existence of red. This is not a trivial distinction. Color is fundamentally a perceptual trick. There is no red in the sunset. There are photons with wavelengths around 650 nanometers reaching your retina. Your brain has 3 types of cone cells: L cones sensitive to long wavelengths, M cones sensitive to medium wavelengths, S cones sensitive to short wavelengths. When the long wavelength photons hit your L cones and barely stimulate your M cones and don't stimulate your S cones at all, your brain generates the QALY, the subjective experience we call red. But that experience is not a property of the light, it's a story your brain tells itself about the pattern of neural firing. Different brains might tell different stories. Some people are colorblind, missing one or more cone types. They see the same sunset, the same photons enter their eyes, but the experience is completely different. So what color is the sunset really? Here's the part that keeps me up at night. The colors you see are not revelations of objective reality. They're a user interface. Evolution didn't design your visual system to show you what's really there. It designed it to show you what's useful for survival. Red fruits stand out against green leaves, ripe versus unripe, predator versus background, mate versus rival. Your color vision is optimized for making those distinctions quickly, not for accurately representing the electromagnetic spectrum. The sunset appears red because that particular pattern of wavelengths triggers a particular pattern of neural response, and your brain labels that response with a color experience that helps you navigate the world. But the label is arbitrary. There's no necessary connection between a 650 nanometer photon and the sensation of redness. The connection is biological convention. Let me take this to a place that's going to make you uncomfortable. If color is a story your brain tells, and different brains tell different stories, then there is no fact of the matter about what color the sunset is. The sunset is not red, it's not orange, it's not any color. It's a distribution of electromagnetic wavelengths, and color is the hallucinatory overlay your brain projects onto that distribution to make it meaningful. When you and I both look at the sunset and agree that it's red, we're not discovering a shared property of the external world. We're discovering that our brains have similar wiring and produce similar hallucinations. But we can never know if your experience of red is the same as my experience of red. We can only know that we both call it red. This should bother you, and here's why. You think you're seeing the world. You think your eyes are windows that let reality in. But they're not windows. They're transducers. They convert electromagnetic radiation into neural signals, and your brain interprets those signals according to algorithms shaped by millions of years of natural selection. What you see is not the territory, it's a map. And the map is designed for navigation, not accuracy. The sunset doesn't look red because it is red. It looks red because representing it as red was useful to your ancestors. The redness is painted on. The world underneath has no color at all. Let's be honest about the deeper implication. If color is a hallucination, what else is? Shapes are constructed by your visual cortex from edge detection and pattern recognition. Depth is inferred from binocular disparity and motion parallax. Continuity is filled in where your blind spot creates gaps. Faces are recognized by specialized neural circuits that sometimes fire when looking at clouds or electrical outlets. Your entire visual field is a simulation, rendered in real time from incomplete data, optimized for speed and utility rather than truth. You have never seen the world as it is. You've only ever seen your brain's best guess about what might be out there. But here's the beautiful part. Here's the reframe. The fact that color is a hallucination doesn't make it less real. It makes it more intimate. The red of the sunset is not in the photons. It's in you. It's something your brain creates, something that exists only in the theater of consciousness, something that has no existence outside of experience. When you see a red sunset, you're not discovering a property of the universe, you're creating beauty. The universe is colorless, silent, meaningless, just particles following equations. But you are a meaning-making machine. You take electromagnetic radiation and turn it into spectacle. You take wavelength distributions and turn them into awe. The sunset is red because you make it red. The atmosphere scatters the short wavelengths, and what remains is a particular pattern of long wavelength photons, and your brain responds to that pattern by generating an experience of warmth, of richness, of ending, of beauty. None of those qualities are in the light. They're in the meaning you assign to the light. Two different species looking at the same sunset see completely different things because they have different visual systems, different evolutionary histories, different biological needs. A mantis shrimp has 16 types of color receptors and sees colors you can't even imagine. A dog has only two and sees the sunset as shades of blue and yellow. The photons are the same. The experience is radically different. So the sunset has no intrinsic color. It only has the color you give it. When the sun finally drops below the horizon and the red fades to purple and then to black, the colors don't go somewhere. They cease to exist. They were never in the sky. They were in your head, generated by your brain in response to photons. And when the photons stop arriving, the colors stop being created. The world doesn't lose color when you stop looking at it. The world never had color. Color is the gift you give to the world by observing it. You are not a passive receiver of light. You're an active participant in creating the visual experience. The sunset is a collaboration between physics and perception, between the scattering of light and the generation of meaning. You've been taught that science reveals the truth behind appearances, that the real explanation for the red sunset is Rayleigh scattering, atmospheric path length, wavelength-dependent scattering cross-sections. And those are true, those are part of the story, but they're not the whole story. The whole story includes you, the observer, the experiencing subject, the meaning maker. The sunset is red because photons of particular wavelengths stimulate your cone cells, and your brain interprets that stimulation as red, and you experience that interpretation as beauty. All three parts are necessary. Remove the photons, and there's no sunset. Remove your eyes, and there's no color. Remove your experience, and there's no beauty. The red is not in any one part, it's in the relationship between all three. If this twisted your brain a little bit, good. That means it's working. I'll see you in the next one.